If you're familiar with fantasy as a genre, you're probably familiar with portal fantasy, like the Chronicles of Narnia, Disney's Owl House, or the thousands of isekai stories where characters from our mundane world find their way into strange and magical lands, becoming trapped there until they complete a quest. I think it's a common reading that portal fantasy stories are about growing up and discovering your own identity. The protagonists are often adolescent, and by being separated from their family, they become their own person, writing their own destiny independent of their parents or carers. As much as they explore their magical new world, they explore themselves too. It's such a ubiquitous trope, but I don't see it very often in RPGs. Occasionally games include the aesthetics of isekai, but rarely explore those themes of growing up and discovering yourself. The magical land of Yeld, however, does exactly that. Your party of young people will discover a door to that magical land, explore, and eventually find themselves trapped there until they gain new identities in the form of classes and become heroes, or even villains, of Yeld. If they don't manage to find their way back before their 13th birthday, they'll be trapped forever as monstrous changes happen to their body. I wonder what that could be a metaphor for. When I was reading this book, I was reminded of the advice of C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, who said, "When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up." This is the second edition of The Magical Land of Yeld. It's a beautifully bound hardback that is full of these amazing comic strips and illustrations. Throughout the book, you'll follow the adventures of a party of characters called the Friends in two different types of comic strip. Some set the tone and give a bit of lore and just have fun with the characters, and they are fun characters. And others, with these flat colour backgrounds, explain the rules of the game through examples. There's loads of content here, including a lore section, an illustrated bestiary, and a full campaign to take on the lieutenants of the vampire Prince Dragul and collect keys to unlock the door back home. Yeld has a unique take on a D6 dice pool system. Whenever you attempt something challenging, you roll the number of dice in your associated attribute: strong, smart, tough, and brave. Your equipped items give you extra dice to add to a specific attribute, and you also get special dice, which are abilities you learn that might give you extra dice to add in specific circumstances. You're rolling against a target number that's set by the adventure difficulty, which is a whole other system that I'm planning to gush about in the next section. Combat always takes place on an 8x8 grid, which means you can use a chessboard you might have lying around, using pieces or tokens to represent characters and obstacles. I love the beautiful simplicity of the chessboard arena. It's an ingenious way of introducing new or younger players to tactical combat while making it seem familiar. And in keeping with the bright and light-hearted tone, defeating an enemy doesn't necessarily mean killing them. And being defeated doesn't mean permanently dying. Defeated players enter a ghost state with special actions they can perform to continue playing until they're resurrected. the magical land of Yeld is quite a traditional game, focusing on one-off, pre-prepared adventures with an overarching story. But that playstyle is so well modernised here that I want to approach this gameplay section a little differently, walking through the process from the perspective of the game master rather than the player. First, you make a character. Yes, the GM makes a character, because in Yeld the default expectation is that everyone takes turns GMing from session to session, and so every player is also a GM. At first you pick a character type based on familiar middle grade fiction archetypes: the know-it-all, the rival, the bully, the brat, or even the dog. And this gives your character some starting stats and some special dice. At first, that's all you need to do. Your characters will gain their new identities later. For the first session or two, it's assumed your group of friends will discover the doorway to Yeld and have one or two introductory adventures before the doorway is locked behind them. After that, the friends will find mentors or class trainers who will help them assume the role of a hero by taking on a heroic job. There's 8 fantasy archetypes to choose from, 8 advanced classes you can gain later, and 8 monster classes for characters over the age of 13. There's also a fun magic system if you choose a spellcaster, with various schools of magic. The obvious ones like white magic, black magic, red magic, blue magic, maths, and goat. You know, the usual. Anyway, to backtrack a little, the book's GMing section for me was the star of the show, with such elegant design principles. The idea is that after each session, a new GM gets picked for the next session. The group then pitches the kind of things they'd like to see in that next adventure. It could be, I was hoping to explore that mine we heard about last week. Or maybe we could talk to the princess. Or I just want to fight some vampires and get a cool sword for my character. Then together you agree on a simple title for the adventure based on those ideas, like The Princess and the Mines, and then decide if you want an easy, normal, or hard adventure. Before the next session, the GM jots down a very simple session plan: an intro scene, a couple of story scenes that include the ideas the group pitched, and a boss encounter. You don't need to worry about railroading here, because the party already said what they wanted to do. You get a number of points to spend on challenges and monsters to populate each scene, based on the difficulty the players chose. And that difficulty also determines the target numbers for skill checks and the rewards for completing the session. It's such a simple and elegant process that means the players always get the adventure they wanted, with very little prep load on one person. Since Yeld is quite a traditional game at heart, pre-prepared campaigns are the obvious choice for expansions. And like I mentioned, there's quite a detailed campaign in the back of the book that can work alongside that adventure prep process. There's a fair few extra adventure packs you can get, and setting rules and character expansions on the website. They're not very expensive too, just a few dollars. A couple are free, and most are available in print, which I always enjoy. The Hunters of Yeld campaign in the 2nd edition core book covers ranks 1 to 4. It assumes you've already had some adventures in Yeld, the doorway is locked behind you, and you've already met a mentor and gained your heroic jobs. characters in Yeld actually start at rank 0, and since GMing an adventure starts at the end of the previous session, it means there's a little gap not covered by the core book, your first adventure. It's not an issue at all, just something to be aware of. There is a rank 0 adventure in the starter set, Mermaid Hunters, which makes sense, and you can get the digital version for $5, so I can't really complain. And the GM section also gives you a brief example to inspire a first adventure if you need. To be honest, I feel like I'm nitpicking now, and that's not what these reviews are about, so it's time to move on. It's always been clear to me that things designed with a younger audience in mind are not automatically unenjoyable for older audiences. Middle grade and young adult fiction includes plenty of high quality work that I love, like Avatar: The Last Airbender or His Dark Materials. So if it's true for TV and literature, surely it's true for games as well. And for me, the magical land of Yeld is proof positive. I was expecting a simple, family-friendly game, and I got so much more. It's one of the most cleverly designed games I've ever encountered, fine-tuning its accessibility without ever compromising. It's accessible, but why should that mean it isn't deep? It's easy to pick up and to GM, but why should that mean there isn't a complex magic system? It's a simple world with evil villains to defeat, but why should that mean it isn't oozing with character, humour and lore? It's made to be enjoyable for young people, but why should that mean it isn't enjoyable for me? Maybe you have a family or students for whom Yeld would be a perfect introduction to RPGs, but maybe you don't. And if you, like C.S. Lewis, can put away childish things, maybe you can find the joy in Yeld that I did. Thank you ever so much for watching, and a special thank you again to this month's Ko-fi supporters. It means the world to me that people find these videos useful and enjoyable, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. That way, every couple of weeks you might discover an interesting new game that you haven't heard about before. I've got a really interesting queue with a mix of genres, tones, playstyles, games designers submit, games people suggested, and games I just fancy talking about. So, until next time, happy adventures.